Obsidian, a once cherished and loved game developer studio that made one of the greatest masterpieces of all time. And I am, of course, talking about Fallout New Vegas. Then they made The Outer Worlds, and it was not necessarily bad, but it was definitely lukewarm. It was safe, it was uninteresting, and it was very, very bland to say the least. Now they are currently known as a completely woke disaster area with everything that we know about Avowed. And while that is happening and everyone is talking about not buying Avowed because one, it's woke, two, it's a double A product that's going to cost you $70, and now they're releasing the Outer Worlds 2. Yes, call me surprised, but I am not excited for this game for some reason.
Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and we're sitting down to talk about what was one of 2024's biggest surprises when it came to a confirmation, and that is the Outer Worlds 2, which is dropping seemingly at the end of 2025. But it could be sooner than that. There was a video I made in 2021 saying that Avowed and the Outer Worlds 2 would be sooner than people actually realize. Now, this isn't me starting off with a victory lap. That's annoying. We're not doing
This is not a victory lap. Did you see the trailer for Outer Worlds 2? That trailer is mega problematic. There's no technically visible problems there unless you don't know the problems of the Outer Worlds 1. And those problems are big. They introduced new weapons, which is cool. They showed some maps, which is kind of cool, and that's pretty much it. And the problem with that is none of those things were things that people complain about the first game. Again, the big problems with the first game were, lack of options, how you can do things, lack of dialogue options. Every skill check didn't really give you any special options or do anything like that. It felt hollow in a lot of ways. The places that you visited, yeah, they looked good, but you very, very, very soon understood it. Wait a minute, this is just 4 walls and that's it. Yeah, it kind of looks cool and it looks spacious, but it feels claustrophobic. And it doesn't seem like they are addressing any of those issues in the Outer Worlds 2. Effectively, seems like I could be wrong, though. Hopefully I'm wrong, honestly. If The Outer Worlds 2 is a great game, that's honestly a win for us, but it doesn't seem like they are learning from any of their mistakes. The same way that Starfield did not learn anything when they made Shattered Space, it looks like The Outer Worlds 2 haven't learned also anything that made The Outer Worlds 1 not exactly beloved.
doing that. But what I'm saying is that I actually, as I thought about it, was less surprised because I realized back then I pointed to how the work on the Outer Worlds 2 began as early as September 2019. Obsidian is very different from other developers under Microsoft's stable, where when they were purchased and got that extra capital, they put their backs into multiple projects, splitting up their multi-100-person team into a Grounded team, an Avowed team, a Pentiment team, an Outer Worlds 2 team, and who knows what else is next. We'll talk about that at the end of this video.
Some of the weapons at least look cool, but again, cool weapons is not something that a game like this requires or needs. It actually needs mechanics, okay? Adding cool weapons and thinking that this game is gonna succeed because of that, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you better go and try to make a competition for Call of Duty or something if that's the way that you are thinking. Because in a role-playing game, cool weapons are nice, but they are not what makes or breaks the game. It's the actual roleplay elements, believe it or not.
Because it could be very exciting if you catch my drift. However, though, Obsidian did that versus what a lot of other developers underneath the Microsoft banner did, which is take all of that capital and put it into one big project. But because of this, I always had a link.
Yeah, again, you see, the weapons look cool, but again, the weapons is not what people are going to be complaining about. The weapons are not going to be what people are talking about. This is going to be the equivalent of Starfield's, oh, look at that, we made dominoes with sandwiches, physics engine. Yeah, no one's gonna care.
lingering hope that The Outer Worlds 2 would arrive sooner, but given that this production started right before the pandemic and then the development landscape changed for a while, I wouldn't fault you for thinking that, yeah, The Outer Worlds 2 is probably years after.
Also, this is a red flag. There are now a couple of games that are breaking out of the mold when it comes to big budget development. And big budget development for, I don't know, the past 2 decades has, well, past decade, I should say, has effectively meant an 8 to 10 year development cycle. And there's a bunch of these games that are breaking out of the mold and kind of coming in 4 or 5 years, which is wild, technically, by modern day standards. So we're going to see how this works.
After Avowed, but Obsidian has the opportunity to pull off an amazing double feature that we haven't seen since Insomniac Games showed up with a new Ratchet & Clank game, and then months later with a new Spider-Man game. They're operating on a whole other level, and I can't wait for The Outer Worlds 2. That's why I want to sit down and talk about a lot of the brand new information we got on this game, but also the fact that, quite frankly, many people are penning The Outer Worlds 2 as this end of 2025 title, and I'm sure that Obsidian certainly wants to spread it out a little bit, but this could be a summer 2025 title. I mean, these projects are working in parallel.
Who cares when it drops? We want quality, not a date.
So we'll see. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome one, welcome all. I hope you're excited for The Outer Worlds 2. Let's sit down and have a little conversation about it, shall we? If you're new here, you're into what's going on with Obsidian, whether it be Avowed or The Outer Worlds 2, we talk about them both quite a bit. Consider subscribing. And before all of that, I want to get into a quick word from today's sponsor. If
you know who's not going to get a quick word from today's sponsor? Us. Because of that.
Some brief thoughts on the trailer itself. Quick things I didn't get to throw out my initial reaction during the Game Awards 2024 because we were flying through like 30, 40 other games that were revealed at that time. But what I'm thinking we might have here, and the conversation's picking up over on Reddit, is a third-person mode. We know that's already in Avowed, but there were a lot
of... So this is literally made by the same exact mindset as Avowed, by the way, from this screenshot. The colors and things. A lot of people, when it comes to Avowed, don't like the aesthetics of it. I personally like the aesthetics of Avowed, by the way, because Avowed does something that not a lot of games now do. They actually do a reasonable flora and fauna, you know? This, though, just looks like someone decided to puke rainbow over all of the landscape. Avowed doesn't do that. Avowed's plants, all of that stuff actually makes sense, how they grow and whatnot, and it seems realistic. It actually just looks like a foreign, strange land, but it seems like, yeah, this is real. When I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is generic fantasy setting number 2305. This does not inspire confidence. This is just a colorful color palette for the sake of a colorful color palette. There is no thought made into the environment here at all, in the slightest, in fact. It's just dumb.
A lot of third-person animations, third-person point of views that were shown off, and the trailer was styled similarly to what we saw with Avowed when they did confirm that there would be a third-person mode. This was actually one of the biggest points of criticism for The Outer Worlds 1, which is that you had all this cool armor, you had this beautiful world space, it was very Bethesda Game Studios-like, but there was no third-person mode. Avowed now has that, as I covered in my preview of the game, but the problem is it's not hotkeyed. At least in that preview build, it was not hotkeyed. So when you wanted to go third person, you had to pause the game and go into the settings options, and I just thought that was silly. Other new things we saw, crazy science weapons like up the wazoo, so many different types of weapons. We saw some sort of stealth system, we saw some sort of new vision mode, throwables were there, we saw hand-to-hand combat a little bit. Like, there was all
no one's throwing a grenade and shooting it midair.
These different expansions on combat, which I think is really good to see, because I know,
again, it's nice to see, but the problem is that was the focus. Their focus was combat and showing you a couple of hippity-bippity zoomer, do you zoom this locations. And again, if that's all that Outer Worlds 2 is, it's gonna be a disaster. Like, this is not even a conversation about Volk, which is going to probably be its own problem, because again, yeah, well, Obsidian has a lot of problems with Volk currently, but this is literally not even considering that currently in the equation. So, yeah, But my expectations for Outer Worlds to succeed going down, going down.
Noticed a lot of the conversation around the Outer Worlds 1 when I was reading the feedback about 2. A lot of people were really getting into the idea of like the first game being disappointing, but many of them also I saw were admitting I didn't try the DLC, which I think moved the gameplay forward in
There's a DLC?
considerable ways, especially Murder on Eridanos, introducing new enemy types and really making combat a little bit more difficult, plus new quest types and locations that really diversified what the Outer Worlds offered, where one thing Obsidian mentions here quite a bit in this Xbox Wire post we're going to get into.
Also, boys, I know I know in the modern day, literally right now, it's kind of easy to look back at the Outer Worlds and say the game wasn't really that bad, but that's because a lot of things nowadays are just shit. Okay, that doesn't make Outer Worlds 1 better. It just kind of fugazis you into believing that.
Is that you should revisit, you should replay, you should check out the Outer Worlds 1. Like a lot of pushing, and obviously this could just be marketing speak when I look at it, but my brain goes to that they're going to continue this adventure from the Outer Worlds 1 into 2 in a more meaningful way than seemingly is being suggested. I say all of that because as you start to read through this Xbox Wire post, it seems very separate from what the Outer Worlds 1 did in the terms of setting and who may even be within this part of the universe. They write, in true Obsidian fashion, you'll carve your path through Arcadia, a colony teeming with factions, intrigue, and chaos. It's also a home of skip drive technology, and where the fate of the entire colony and the galaxy rests. As a daring, undeniably good-looking, and questionably competent Earth Directorate agent, you're tasked with uncovering the source of devastating rifts threatening the entire galaxy. And talk about stakes, the choice of how you deal with these rifts is up to you. Your world's your way, as we say at Obsidian. Now, are the rifts the only thing threatening Arcadia? Of course not. That would be too easy. A factional war between the benevolent rulers known as the Protectorate, a rebellious scientific religious order, and a corporate megapower has the colony torn apart. Each is trying to close or control the rifts for their...
Okay, this is also personally a small red flag for me. But this is what I see a lot of games doing, and they do it poorly. They are gonna put on paper and they're gonna tell you about these extremely distinguished factions, like the science guys, and then there's the religious guys, and then there's the corporate guys, and then there's the NHA, National Homeless Association, which is amazing, by the way. That's a reference to God of High School, by the way. Losers, you don't know that, do you? Pathetic. Anyway, yeah. You don't need to distinguish these groups that much in the name, in their description. You need to distinguish them in-game by what they do, how they look at things, their methodologies, their belief systems, their political leanings, and all of these things. And a lot of games that do this cheaply and poorly try extremely hard, I have noticed, to distinguish that. So, like, for example, the fearsome god zealots, that's a faction, and then there's we believe only in scientists, there's the other faction, and they go as deep as the name implies, and that's where it stops. What would be better is if you can't even distinguish between these factions, and someone you ask around, and you get to know what these factions are about, and then you meet the factions, and then you learn how they are different from each other. Not just that you hear the name, oh, this is a religion, this is a Scientology, this is the Homeless Association. That is a very, very blatant shortcoming, in my opinion, that just symbolizes poor writing. I don't know, maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but I think a lot of games have failed exactly when they do this.
their own good / monetarily profitable needs. Church, state, and capitalism. Who will win? Well, that's really up to you. This is your game. We've said the choices were yours through the whole time.
Again, how do you distinguish church, state, and capitalism? All of these three things can be actually effectively the same depending on how they are built. I see no distinction between the name church, state, and capitalism when we're talking about factions. These, this is the a capitalism can be religious. Capitalism can be run by a state. The state can be religious or not. The state can be capitalistic or whatever you want to make it. Like these three traits are not distinct from one another by definition.
See, that's the Obsidian motto. Yeah, you get it. So this is actually interesting because if y'all are like me and you have the lack of a privilege to play the Shattered Space expansion, this sounds just like that. Like space drive technology, a religious faction in the middle of it.
How relatable, Matty. How relatable. Man, I'm gonna now suck your dick. You got it, boss.
Who's also scientifically driven. Like, this really does sound exactly like what was happening over with that Shattered Space DLC. And I say that and laugh, not as a dunk on Bethesda, but when the Outer Worlds 1 came around, Bethesda was doing this Fallout First program, and it was awful, and it felt like they were totally detached from what made Bethesda Game Studio special. And here comes the Outer Worlds 1 as literally the perfect game at the perfect time, answering exactly what people wanted, and it did really well because of that, and also the many great things it did individually that people were just attracted to. And now you see Bethesda misses hard on a DLC, and here comes a game with very similar ideas that could very well execute them better than Bethesda, which just seems to be what Obsidian's done. In this case, you can't say it's intentional. Like, these are just in too close proximity to one another. So it's just insane to see how it's playing out once again. That Zeitgeist alone, setting.
That's a very stupid opinion. It's 5 years in the making, okay? So if Bethesda fucks up now, they didn't plan this. This is glorification for no reason.
Very different. We're talking about Arcadia, a new colony, and this is so new that there is no information on this place. None whatsoever. Like, nothing in game, no mentioning of it, no wiki pages mentioning it, no community member knows what it is. They're moving into a completely different area. This opens up a whole new potential of just no returning characters, all new everything, and I just wonder what that direction is. The main thing that they do mention here is about the board still kind of being dissolved, so there is some sort of continuation, but the way I think about it a little bit is how Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 work off each other, where they're within the same world, but they're at completely different points where you can see the continuity, but it's a good starting point for the second one as much as it is the first one, so you can really get into the game series anyway, and maybe that was the vision of the Outer Worlds too. A little bit like Fallout, where, again, this is a series that was clearly inspired by those types of games, where, hey, you can jump into Fallout 2, 3, 4, New Vegas, hell, even 76, the first one. You can jump in wherever you want to start your adventure and just see what this series has to offer over time, if that's what you'd like to do. So
by the way, if you shoot someone with a mini nuke that close, you're dead.
it seems like it's a sequel in that sense based on what little information we have right now. That's at least my assumption. They also mentioned here and really emphasize the point that it's an RPG. They say when it comes to crafting your commander, it is a full-on RPG with RPG elements, time from ability.
Well, we're gonna see that. And judging from Avowed, I doubt that this is true. I'm pretty sure the boob slider is gonna be plink with a slight bump, and behind a piece of dry wood, and a piece of dry wood, but it's slightly bent. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the options. There is no way one Obsidian team is insane in the membrane, and then the other one isn't, while they use the same color palettes for shit. There's no way.
Points to skill checks and conversations to even how flawed you want to be, because let's admit, no one is perfect. How you build your commander and chart your way through the narrative is uniquely yours as you plunge into this player-driven story. Whether you're a disciple of diplomacy, a smart strategist, a crusader of chaos, or defiantly different, the choice, you guessed it, is yours. Oh, and with this being the Outer Worlds, yes, you can be dumb. I noticed a lot of people glancing over this, but I think it's really important to highlight RPG with RPG elements, and also highlight that you can be dumb. The dumb ending in the Outer Worlds 1 is still one of the
this is like the only thing that they did from Fallout New Vegas, the dumb option. Well, I guess from Fallout in general. the dumb options where you're literally a moron.
Funniest ones I've seen. You can literally fly into the sun. It's a thing of beauty. So I love that they're bringing back being stupid in this game. Low intelligence playthroughs in the old Fallout games were great. I love that there are modern games still hanging on to that sort of stuff. But what we see here is an RPG with RPG elements. And I talk about this because a lot of games use RPG elements but are not an RPG. And in turn, I've said this for about 7-8 years now, that the term of RPG, like, oh, you're an RPG, it gets watered down. It means less and less because it's the genre that so many developers borrow from. Every game has a skill tree. Every game has a perk system. These used to be exclusively RPG elements, but now genres are, as I've talked about many times as well, turning into blenders and taking ideas from others and putting them into their own. So it's important to highlight that this is still an RPG with skill checks, choice and consequence, that sort of thing, which Obsidian is really well known for. And
again, is Obsidian known for this? I mean, is it? Kinda doubting it with Avowed. Kinda didn't see that in Outer Worlds 1, honestly, for the most part. So, I don't know, press X to doubt.
And that has me excited. Interestingly, they also mention here, on top of that, the universe is expanding beyond the game. The Outer Worlds 2 will be featured in the upcoming Secret Level anthology series streaming on Prime Video. Tune in on December 17th for a short story that takes place between the Outer Worlds.
Oh, wow, so that I don't care.
And the Outer Worlds 2. While you may have thought that was a lot of shilling, the Secret Level episode is legitimately good, and if the board were around, again, see, referencing past tense, they tell you it was mandatory viewing. I feel like this is going to end up being, I don't want to oversell it, but more important than we actually give it credit for, because again, we have very little knowledge on Arcadia, and this Secret Level,
it's probably not important at all. Also, using a third party thing to you know, give lore about your game is fucking cheap and shit. Stop.
thing is coming around, and it feels like it might be our first bit of information on what's happening at least between these two games. What's the setup? Is there going to be some sort of continuation? And normally I'd be like, whatever, but Shadow Labyrinth, which got announced at the Game Awards, was a continuation of what was shown off during Secret Level. So this makes me want to check it out as well. I mean, these are quick 10, 15 minute, whatever episodes, so why not, right? Either way. But I do wonder just how far they're going to carry things here with the Outer Worlds.
Okay, I'm done. I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see. The woke controversy is gonna start sooner or later. I watched the trailer, didn't see woke there, so it is what it is. But again, the focus on guns and just good-looking places because fucking lights and zoomer shit is not what's gonna make Outer Worlds 2 good. Okay, that's what makes Call of Duty competitors. Not roleplay games. Anyway, that was Mr. Matty. Placed it out of 10. Bye.